Israel's genocidal war on Gaza has been met with massive protests across the world. In so many countries, we have seen tens of thousands of people taking to the streets, rejecting Israel's apartheid, rejecting Israel's invasion, and expressing solidarity with the people of Palestine. Now, this is in sharp contrast to the responses of many governments, especially in the global north, which have completely bought Israel's justifications. But in fact, what we have seen is people's movements continuing their protests and, in many cases, actually pushing their governments, exerting pressure to take a more progressive stance. It's also interesting to see some of the geographical divides when it comes to solidarity with Palestine. Countries of the global south often taking a far more progressive, a far more radical position. And one such country where both in terms of the stand of people's movements and in terms of the stand of the government, there's been a very clear position in favor of Palestine is South Africa. Now, South Africa, of course, is a very long history of struggling against apartheid, and solidarity with Palestine has been very much a part of that struggle as well. So to know more about this, we have with us Phakamile Hlubi Majola, the national spokesperson of the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, the largest trade union in the country.
I think for any nation that has experienced either colonialism or imperialism, this is a very, very clear issue. There's no confusion about what's going on here. And certainly for us as South Africans, having experienced apartheid and the brutality of a racist government, which has, where racism was legislated, where the struggles of the Palestinian people resonate very much with us as Black people in South Africa, because we know how that feels. We know how it feels to be discriminated against on the basis of race. We know how it feels to be denied education, to be denied healthcare, to be denied a decent human life, to be stripped of your humanity, to be stripped of your dignity, to have your land stolen from you in the name of race and racism. We know how that feels like. And so this is why when we look at the situation in Palestine, it's very clear to us that Israel is an apartheid state because of the manner in which it projects its leadership on the people there. They have occupied the land of Palestine for more than 70 years. There has been absolute violent brutality in that period of time against the local population. There have been several protests taking place in South Africa. NUMSA, obviously, for many years, we've been protesting regularly against apartheid in Palestine. We actually even had a march in March of this year against the apartheid Israel. We went to the embassy, and of course, they ignored us. No surprise there. But obviously, since October 7th, there's been some really intense rallying and support for Palestinian people. The most recent one being the one that took place in Cape Town on Sunday, which was a massive, massive march, tens of thousands of people marching in the streets of Cape Town. And this is particularly significant, that march of tens of thousands of people in Cape Town, because Cape Town is the seat of the Democratic Alliance government, which is a right-wing government in South Africa and a vocal supporter of apartheid Israel. NUMSA usually disagrees with the South African government on many things. But when it comes to the foreign policy position on Palestine, we absolutely support them on this. They have been 100% correct and ideologically clear about how to approach the situation.
Having considered the proposed amendment moved by the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, I rule as follows: that the amendment is in order, as it only seeks to clarify the circumstances of the closure of the Israeli embassy and the suspension of diplomatic relations.
The South African government, for example, was part of the vote in the General Assembly calling for an immediate ceasefire, which, of course, that vote and the outcome of that vote, where the majority of countries called for a ceasefire, was ignored.
The collective punishment of Palestinian civilians through the unlawful use of force by Israel is a war crime. The deliberate denial of medicine, fuel, food, and water to the residents of Gaza is tantamount to genocide. The root cause of all this conflict is the illegal occupation of Palestine territory by Israel as reflected in the UN Security Council Resolution 2334, which states that Israeli settlements constitute a flagrant violation under international law. As South Africans, we appreciate the importance and value of international solidarity, and as an important voice of the Global South, representing a large portion of humanity, we believe that BRICS has a vital role and a voice in a widespread international effort to achieve a just and lasting peace.
South Africa has been calling for the United Nations to implement a peacekeeping force to defend women and children in Israel. As NUMSA, we would wholeheartedly support the expulsion of the Israeli ambassador. So we really think that the South African government is on track. So we are trying to balance our ideological positioning on Palestine and the fact that we do support boycotts, for example, on Israel for what it's doing to Palestine, etc. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that we don't play into the agenda of the right-wing Republican Party. And so that's where we are on those issues. But as I said, I think it could be solved if we were having stronger relationships with BRICS countries, because we could actually, we could create more jobs and create more opportunities by replacing those relationships with other countries. But unfortunately, where the governing party is right now, that's not really something that they're pushing at the moment. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
And that's all we have time for today. We'll bring you more interviews, more discussions about the global protests in solidarity with Palestine, about the struggle against Israel's apartheid. We'll bring you more of these on People's Dispatch. So do keep watching and do follow us on all the social media platforms.